Jikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. America, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Thank you so much for joining me for another session of the Daily African Proverbs. My name is Simon Javan Okello. I am in Seattle, Washington, and I am really excited to be here with you for today's incredible session of the Daily African Proverbs. I am in Seattle, as I said. I'm from Kenya originally, and today we have a really amazing proverb that we are going to share. And I also want to share the link to the YouTube live stream so that you can join me there if you have a moment. I already see that a few people are joining me there, and I really appreciate it. I hope you have already subscribed to the channel. Our proverb today is really exciting. It says, "A child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife." A child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife. This is a Nigerian proverb. So it's also the latest tweet. It's the pinned tweet on my Twitter. So if you want to check it out there and retweet it, that would be great. I am currently just pinning it to the Clubhouse room. And then I want you to take a moment, ping in 3 to 5 people that you think should be here for today's conversation. And, I want to hear your opinions, your ideas, your words of wisdom when it comes to this proverb that we are discussing today. And in just a moment, I want to share some of the takeaways, some of the 3 nuggets that I believe you should take away from today's conversation, so that if at all you have to leave earlier, before the conversation ends, you'll be able to, have something to equip yourself with, because our hope is that whenever we gather here for the African Father in America podcast, especially for the Daily African Proverbs, each one of us leaves with something that we can take home with us. And also today, every Thursday, typically, we have Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who is an incredible spiritual leader from South Africa. Today, Gogo cannot join us. She has a funeral that she has to, be involved with, and to just spend time, dealing with. But she told me that today would have been 101 years since Credo Mutwa was born. And Vusamazulu Credo Mutwa is the individual I'm speaking about. I first learned about Credo Mutwa through Gogo Rutendo Ngara. When I was interviewing her, she used to quote him a lot. And then as we continued, learning more about, African spirituality and how there is, for me growing up, I grew up in a Christian household. I also had family members who are Muslims, but I didn't really appreciate African traditions and African spirituality. So when I began interacting with people like Gogo Rutendo, and she introduced me to someone like Lita Boy, and I began learning that I should actually appreciate herbalists, spiritual leaders from our African tribes. I should be much more appreciative of the talents and the skills, and also just what they're like libraries of information, So that's why today we should actually just talk a little bit about Vusamazulu Credo Mutwa. Today would have been 100 years. Today would have been his 101st birthday. So if you are hearing about him for the first time, go to Google and find out who Credo Mutwa is. And then, if you have access to Gogo Rutendo, let me know. But if you have any question about Credo Mutwa, Gogo Rutendo is the chair of Credo Mutwa Foundation. Let me know, and I can send your questions go, and then next time she can come back with answers when she's our guest here. But here are the takeaways that we prepared for you in regards to this proverb from Nigeria. It says, a child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife. Today's proverb may seem to be a little harsh, but there's a lot of truth in it. Many times if a child fears a beating, they will never admit wrongdoing, and this is also even with adults. Our society has put us in a way that everybody fears making mistakes. Everybody lives in fear of breaking the law and this and that. So people are always, people in a box. People are, set in certain ways that, growth is actually limited. Growth is limited when people are living in fear. And so for me as a parent, I've learned this sometime the hard way, because I got some beating growing up. So in certain times when my children behave a certain way, I actually talk to them about it, and I let them know that, you're lucky that you live here in the United States, because if you are in Kenya, and it was about 10 years ago, right now in Kenya it's also illegal to spank children. But I was telling them, about 10 years ago, or when I was growing up in Kenya, if you did that, you'd get like a beating that you'd never forget, And I just feel that there's a lot that is lost in the course of, responding to issues through violence, like beating children. So here are the 3 takeaways, and then we are going to open the floor and just learn a little bit more. And also we are going to talk about Credo, Mutwa. So number 1 is that a child who is beaten will oftentimes have fear of admitting wrongdoing. If you have a child in your household or in your life that, they did something, but they never say they did it. Maybe it's not their fault. Maybe it's because you pinched them and you've made them feel cornered, So, allowing people to open up even if they've made mistakes is a skill, And it's something that we are reminded about with this proverb. Number 2, it is important for children to feel safe and protected, especially when they are faced with difficult decisions. You just have to create an environment where your children, or even children that are not yours, feel safe, telling you the truth. And I think that is also something that depends a lot on your own upbringing and how you learned that yourself. So maybe as parents, there are a lot that we have to unlearn, As fathers, there's a lot that we have to unlearn, because, at least in my culture, male children got a lot of beating, So we sometime I always just think that is the only solution to issues. But then I realized that, I never learned how to listen very well and have more questions and ask questions, and then listen even further and find solutions through conversations, through wisdom, by being wiser, And so I want to go to the 3rd takeaway here, that says sometimes it is better to protect oneself, even if it means taking the blame for something one did not do, And if you get a child to that place where they protect themselves to an extent where even if you insist that they did something, they will just say yes even if they didn't do it. Or they will say no even if they did it. It's important that we create an environment that allows people around us, not just children, people around us, to be able to open. And a lot of the time, when we think that something is wrong, before we look at somebody else, before we put blame on somebody else, we should also think of our contribution to that situation. So those are some of the nuggets that I wanted to share that we prepared in relation to this Nigerian proverb. And also, the proverb itself says, a child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife. This proverb has a lot. I don't think we have even scratched the surface yet. So I would love to hear what you all have to say about it. I would love to invite you to share the link to this room within Clubhouse and outside of Clubhouse. If you are joining us on YouTube, let me know in the comments, what does this proverb mean to you and where are you joining us from? So with those, just few opening statements, I do want to recognize, everyone in the room. I see that Moses is here with us, and Ivy and Laron and Rushi and Nene and Sarah and Bibi and Lavender. Thank you so much. I would love to, invite you, if you're not on the stage, to join us on the stage. And also, if you are on the stage, I just want you to be ready to share your own perspectives. Share with us where you are joining us from. Share with us what this proverb means to you. And then we will go to the next person and listen to what everyone has to say. So we'll start with you, Lavender, if this is a good time. First, thank you for all the support that you've given me and the African Father in America podcast. Share with us how you're doing, where you're joining us from, and what today's proverb from Nigeria means to you. A child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife. Thanks a lot.
Hi, Simon. Hi, everyone. Simon, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I forgot to say I'm speaking from Kenya. And today's proverb means, to me, this means that when you fear consequences, you'll do everything to lie. Or rather, I'll use myself as an example. Like, I think about my actions and whether they're good or bad. I also think about the consequences that may come with it. Thank you so much. This is Lavender, and I'm complete.
Thank you, Lavender, for sharing with us your perspectives as well. I appreciate it deeply. If you're just joining us, welcome to the Daily African Proverbs. This is happening here in the African Father in America Club. We are live streaming on YouTube as well. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. This is a good time for you to show support. And if you haven't pinged in 3 to 5 people to join us in the room, please do so if you're on Clubhouse, and also share the link to the room so that we can continue building this village fire. Now we want to move on to Bibi. Bibi, share with us where you're joining us from, how you're doing, and also what today's proverb from Nigeria means to you. It says, a child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife.
Good morning, Simon. Good morning, everyone, evening or afternoon, wherever you are. I'm actually speaking from Tennessee right now with Anjoa in the background. Hi, Mama. But as far as the proverbs go, I'm just gonna take a different take on it today, and I'm gonna use different cultures as an example. For us Africans, and I'm not sure, but I believe non-Americans use the same method as well. We use a lot of proverbs in our speech, and we use for example, food or something certain someone likes as a way of invitation. And most of the time, as Africans, well, I'll just say me, when I talk to my husband or my friends, I don't just go direct. I tend to use proverbs, or at least use my children. For example, um, your child says this and that when I'm really implying me, but when confusion comes in, then that's when I realize and I catch myself that I can't always assume that they'll understand, because different cultures, and most times I don't realize it unless I catch myself. Then that's when it comes back to the proverb that to today's proverb, that sometimes we have to pause and take a step back before assuming that what you say is not being conveyed, or you're not conveying it correctly, because we can always assume. And that goes with the proverb as well. When a child plays with a knife, and because they're afraid of letting you know, they will never let you know that they've played with a knife, when we all know a knife can be um, both useful and also dangerous as well. So that's just my take. I know it's completely all twisted, but I just wanted to share that in there. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bibi. You know, as you're speaking, I was also reminded of how a knife is very symbolic in this proverb. You know, a child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife. You know, a knife is essential in every household, but especially in African households where everything, you have to cut the onions, you have to cut the tomatoes, you have to cut the meat. You know, here in the US, sometimes you buy meat that has already been processed. You have to slaughter the chicken. You know, you have to everything. You have to use the knife. You know, so if it's missing, you know, things are crazy within that household. You know, the environment is tense. You know, so nobody really wants to say they know where the knife is, and then now it's a child. You know, what are they going to do? You know, so you know, this reminds me also of how, you know, the teachers that I remember actually, you know, in high school. You know, in high school, you remember everything that happened. We used to be in a high school where, you know, we were being really beat, you know, like a snake was being killed, you know. and I remember some of those moments, and I remember the faces of some of the teachers, and I remember them being happy, you know, with that cane coming down on your buttocks. You know, they were just smiling and enjoying it, you know. and that's
remember those days.
and that is one of the most weirdest things I can ever imagine. Like, how can you be happy while you're spanking somebody's child, someone that you don't know what they went through before they came and became your student? But what you completely believe is that I will spank this one until they become better, you know. Anyway, I don't think it works. You know, I don't think it works. While it's enjoyable to the perpetrator, it's painful to the child. They never forget, and nobody lives happy. Nobody, you know, even years later, nobody is happy about such situations. Anyhow, so I want to welcome you, my brother Rushi, so that we can also hear your perspective. I really appreciate you for your contribution to this space. Share with us, please.
No problem. Thank you, Simon. This is really a deep proverb on a couple of levels. And this, what really strikes me about this proverb is, in this proverb, it doesn't say that the child stole the knife. It just says that that there's a missing knife that the child has touched, but that he will never admit to touching. So it's a very interesting proverb. And one thing about this proverb, it talks about fear. And fear is an emotion I feel that can be, and it could be a healthy emotion and it could be an unhealthy emotion. It's just kind of a line to where fear can be detrimental to a child or a person, or it can be beneficial. There's that line of normalcy, and you have to be somewhere along that line, I feel, um, in your life. You can't be too fearless, and at the same time, you can't be very fearful. And I know this proverb. I think about my childhood, and to be honest, I was the child who I probably would not admit to touching the knife, because in our culture, I remember as a kid, one thing one thing that kind of goes along with this proverb is that this proverb kind of touched upon lying, and one thing that goes with lying in growing up in my culture is telling. We always had a saying of you don't want to be a tattletale, which is you don't want to tell on someone else to save yourself, or you don't want to tell on someone else just to be in favor with your parents or some type of authority figure. And also, we also said another saying we always would say is snitches get stitches, which means that if you tell, you're going to get beat. So, so those sayings kind of remind me of this proverb. And I have a stepbrother who he passed away a while ago. Um, but my stepbrother, he was fearless. He feared nothing. I mean, if he touched a knife, he was going to go tell everyone, I touched the knife, and what you going to do about it? He was very fearless. He feared nothing. I think of him a lot when I think about this proverb, and I always admired his fearlessness. It's something that I really did not capture in my spirit. That fearlessness he had. I was probably on the other side of the spectrum on when it comes to that. I remember as a kid, there were things I would do. For instance, I remember I think one day I shot a firecracker inside a house, and someone came outside and said, "Who shot the firecracker in the house?" I'm like, "I don't know. It wasn't me," knowing that it was me. So I was always the kid who feared beatings. And to be honest with you, now look back at my childhood, I probably never ever got a beating, to be honest with you. Maybe a couple small spankings, but I was the kid who never got beat. But I was also the kid who always stayed out of trouble at the same time because I feared getting beat. So I think a lot about myself with this proverb, and it's a very interesting proverb because the child who fears the beating. Not sure how that progresses in later in life. I know how I turned out, but it's a very very good proverb to dissect, and also I would love to hear everyone's take on how this proverb affects them and how it relates to their childhood or their children to get a deeper, more deeper insight on this proverb. So thank you so much for the time, Simon.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love your response, really. I love your response, and I want to just welcome Kesiwa, who has been one of the biggest supporters of this space, and Laron, of course, and Sarah. Thank you all for being here, and Alejandro, thank you for being here as well. When I was listening to you, Rushi, I thought of how, when you spoke about fearlessness, I thought of I had siblings who are like that too, but but they were also tender and vulnerable, where even though they were fearless, when they really got into trouble, they were the most loudest in crying. They say, I'm fearless, and then they run into something little, you hear them really crying, right?
Yes, that's how my stepbrother was. He was fearless, but when that beating came, he made the most noise. Definitely, definitely.
Yeah, man. Wonderful. I just love this space, and one of my favorite things is really, really sitting as if we are around the village fire and just having a conversation, guided by these amazing proverbs. Today, we are in Nigeria. We are virtually in Nigeria talking about a child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife. Now we want to listen to what Nene has to say, but Bibi and Bente and Alejandro, Moses, Laron, Sarah, if you want to join us on stage, hand raising is currently on, so you can all join us on stage and contribute your perspectives. But I want to invite each one of you who is listening right now, take a moment and ping in 3 to 5 people on Clubhouse to join us. Share the link to this room on Twitter, on Facebook, on WhatsApp. Let's share it, and then clip some of these nuggets that you're hearing, and tweet it so that we can retweet it on Twitter. But if you're on YouTube, I'm already sharing a few comments there, so let me know where you're joining us from as well, if you're on YouTube. Thank you. Let's hear from Nene. Nene, thank you for being here today. How are you? Where are you joining us from, and what does this proverb mean to you?
Hey Simon, hi Lavender, Bibi, Ruchi, and all the listeners, I guess, in the lounge. Simon, it's always a pleasure to share a stage with you. So thank you for allowing me on your virtual stage. My name is Nene. I live in Houston, Texas currently, but I was born and raised in Africa. And this, so first off, Simon, when you talk about discipline, I'm gonna say something real quick. I was born and raised in a Muslim family. I now really mostly, I relate with Christianity now more. I have a relationship with God, and I, accepted Christ as my personal savior. So I, when I think about this scripture, my dad, being Muslim, is so funny. He always used to rush to quote scripture in the Bible. And you ever heard how when people quote scripture in the Bible, they rush to quote it based on their own interpretation? They take from it what they want, they leave the rest. And all I ever heard was spare the rod and spoil the child. And that was his justification. Spare the rod and spoil the child. If I don't smack you, or if I don't cane you, or if I don't beat you up, this is what is going to happen. But what, I guess our ancestors or our people, I can speak for, like my parents, what they forgot was a part of the scripture that says that he who spares the rod, hates his son, but he who loves him is diligent to discipline him. So it wasn't so much as I'm going to beat you up, it's so much as I'm going to discipline you. And so even in that context, the rod was not necessarily a physical thing, or it's not meant to be a physical thing per se. It can even be, speaking to the child, but maybe, in a strict manner. But all I hear is spare the rod and spoil the child. So so for me, that kind of just, highlights the whole beating and stuff, because, like when I think back on why our people beat us, it was as a sign of discipline. Not so much that they hated us, but you did something bad and this is how I'm going to discipline you. So anyway, I digress a little bit. That's what I see from the beating concept. Now, I'm going to attempt, I guess, to answer or to break the proverb down a little bit. So when you guys were talking, and I thank you all for your shared wisdom. Thank God I didn't come on at first, because I got to steal from you guys. But when I was listening to you guys talk, I think somebody was you that mentioned that a knife can be used for both good and evil. It is such a vital instrument. I don't think that there's any home that there's not a knife. Even for people who don't cook, at least they have a knife for peeling something. So anyway, when I hear that, I think, okay, so sometimes children don't necessarily, like children are curious by nature, right? A child never knowingly goes to pick up an instrument that they know is going to hurt them. They touch a stove once and it burns them, I guarantee you they're not going back there. But if a child gets burned by a stove and they go back there, chances are they're not going there just because they're stubborn. They're going there because they're curious. There's an element inside of them that wants to understand what happened, why did that thing burn me, and what if I tried it from another angle. So when I hear that a child playing with a knife, sometimes children do these things not out of, oh, I just want to be stubborn, but what is this contraption that I see my parents using? Can it be used for this? Can it be used for that? And in my mind, I tend to think about the creative side of it. So if a child is playing with a knife, even though as parents there's that natural instinct to want to protect them, if a child is playing with a knife, right, and we see it as, oh my God, I am going to smack you for that or something, in more ways than one, it stifles their creativity. So going back now to the what do you call it? To the proverb, fearing that, okay, I was playing with this knife. So I'm just thinking from the mindset of a child. I was playing with a knife, but I was trying to figure out what it does because I really want to learn in future, maybe how to make knives or whatever it is. Oh my God, now the knife is missing. They're going to blame me if I tell them I was playing with it. So the intention of the child playing with the knife was not a bad one, but they know the consequences of it. So now I fast forward to their future. I feel like that particular proverb just lends to the fact that it stifles the ability and willingness to speak up sometimes, even when the intention was right. But because they know that the consequence is not going to be a good one, and automatically, if anybody in this room, your parents were anything like mine, my dad never asked. He beat you first and then he asked later what happened. So it's like, okay, I better not even say anything because they're not even going to want to hear my own side of the story. And then I kind of feel also too that in more ways than one, when I talk back about the creativity, even though some of these things are dangerous for children, but knowing that, oh, if my parents catch me doing this, they're automatically going to beat me up. In more ways than one, it makes them fearful of being curious. It stifles that creativity. And so when I fast forward now to where we are in this day and this age too, I am a mental wellness advocate. When I hear that, when I think about that stifling the ability, to speak up and like to own their truth, it has so many consequences to that, right? A lot of children out there these days who go out there and they do these things, the school shootings and stuff like that. 99% of the time, it has something to do with my voice has been stifled for so long because of the consequence of speaking up. If I speak up, this is what is going to happen. So I'm not going to speak up. It's about time I did something about it. That's what I see from that proverb. I may be completely off topic. And guys, please forgive me if it sounds like I'm rambling, but I blame it on Simon. He didn't give me time to study it. And I just saw it this morning. So I'm improvising while here on stage. Simon, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to speak on your stage. And I mute my mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Nene. Yeah, you're very, very, articulate and wise. I deeply appreciate your wisdom and also the stories you shared with us. As to reasons why sometimes you as especially thinking about it as a child, sometimes children just don't want to say anything because they know what's going to happen right after that. Because they study patterns, and they actually know us better than way more than we think they do. Children are very, very smart, and some I have 3 daughters, and sometimes I am very focused on something. Then I look up and I find one of them just like looking at me and waiting for me to finish what I'm doing and engage with them. And sometimes it takes me a while to engage with them, and then you hear them, they touch you, and I'm realizing that it's because I've always told them that when I'm in the middle of something, just hold on, so they're learning how to get my attention. But sometimes, they're always just like daddy, 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 until you give them the attention. So it just depends with what level of comfort you're giving your children to engage you or to even disrupt you when you're in the middle of something. But if they they do daddy, 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 or mommy, 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 or they touch you, or they are there, they are not leaving, but they are right there waiting for you, and then your response is, go away, or you're always pushing them away, or you're even punishing them for wanting your attention. Then they will learn not to seek for help from you. They learn to even stay away from you. So it's really, for me, what I'm learning is, as I am spending a lot of time with my three daughters, who are all less than 8 years old, I'm beginning to appreciate just listening, just pausing and listening, and really learning how to discipline myself instead of disciplining my children. Because if I'm well disciplined, then it's just in alignment with what they learn, because they really, really grasp what they see you doing, not what they hear you saying. So that's really important. But I want to come to another incredible contributor to the Daily African Proverbs, Latanja. Thank you for being here. I would love for you to also share with us your perspective in regards to this Nigerian proverb. It says, "A child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife." Let us also know where you are joining us from. Thank you so much.
Well, good grand rising to you, Simon. I'm here in Marietta, Georgia, and it's a good day for air to be in the presence of our gathering here. I was just thinking that the invisible is hidden to protect us from shame. As I think about the missing knife, it's invisible, and it's like, where do we place the blame? I say to beat anything is to change the behavior. And it's kind of like our memory in a lot of ways. How do we learn these methods of discipline? I think about the Africans that were enslaved when they were captured, and how they were put away with fear tactics through a process called seasoning, to where they were tortured and tormented and made to lose their self esteem and self worth. Because if you would look at how a person would have to be conditioned to be able to perform some kind of a ritual, or be put into a place to where they have to perform against their will. So then you have to be able to beat them down in order that they no longer identify with being human, to the point where anything you say to them, they would adhere to, because they're fearful of you. And so I think some of these kinds of fears comes from something that is innate and within you, in your DNA, that you have no idea, because of the memory that these kinds of things bring about. So I recall when I was growing up, when we were asked to go outside and get a switch. And so I would think about it as like, almost, how do I do this? Do I get a big switch? Do I get a small switch? Because if I bring a small one in, then it's going to be like, it appears that I don't want to take the beating as much. But if I get a bigger limb off of the tree to bring in to get a spanking, then that would be kind of like going against myself. So it just kind of gives you this duality that you always have within yourself. That how do you learn to be able to protect yourself in the middle of being fearful of something? And so that's what it kind of brings up to me. It's something that we all have, our memory bank, that holds a lot of things, that helps us to be able to withstand anything that we go through. And so, with that memory is how you learn to protect yourself. And fear sometimes gives you extra adrenaline to be able to handle whatever life has, that whatever life brings to you. So, a child who fears beatings would never admit that he played with a missing knife. That's the protection. I'm not going to, as it says, Don't ever tell the right hand what the left hand is doing, or show, or whatever the case. So you have an instinct that gives you a primal instinct that we all have, that gives us our essence to be able to shield and protect ourselves from harm. And so that's what I have for now with that proverb. Thank you so much, Simon, for your space.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Latanja, for your incredible contribution. I deeply appreciate it. I just want to say that, today has been really incredible. I've learned so much from each one of you, and I know that we are going towards the end of our time together today. So I just want to see if anybody else who is in the audience wants to join us on the stage and contribute. Contribute your perspectives to today's proverb. And if not, I am going to introduce just one more question to those who are on stage. So if you're on stage, I want you to prepare to just respond to one question in relation to like a tip around disciplining. Imagine, you are talking to young black fathers, across the world, young African fathers across the world. And you want to give them one tip in regards to, disciplining their children, or, around our topic today. How do they ensure that they allow their children to express themselves, but still feel safe while doing so, around them? Because I feel that the fear, and even according to some of the examples that were being shared today, the fear really begins with parenting and the people that you grow up around as a child, and the fear or the support that they give you around that age. So I just want to get one tip from you all, because I know that majority of my audience members are, young black fathers. And so I want them to get something from you all, so that when they listen, when they watch today or tomorrow or in the future, they can also learn something from our conversation today. Now, for those who are just joining us, my name is Simon Okello. I am in Seattle, Washington. I am from Kisumu, Kenya, originally, right by Lake Victoria. And we are discussing a Nigerian proverb. It says, a child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife. A child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife. We've digested this proverb by, we've gone through it many, many times. And I feel like it's now reminding me about, a couple of things. This proverb also speaks to patterns, and I remember growing up, one of the things that we feared the most in our neighborhood was being bitten by snakes, and that's still one of my fears until today. And sometime, you'd be walking around the neighborhood when it's starting to get darker, and one of your friends says, there's a snake around where you're just about to step, where your foot is just about to go to. And you see something really like a snake. Maybe it's just a rope, maybe it's just a stick, but you really jump so high, And as Latanja was saying, the adrenaline, the fear of that snake really gives you some energy, that when you picture how high you jumped because of what the information you were just given, before that you're just walking, maybe heading home after a soccer game, maybe eating roasted maize, we used to eat a lot of roasted maize in Manyata. But then suddenly, you jump so high, you don't know where the maize went, you don't know where everything went, but you just want to be safe, you just want to protect yourself from this snake. Not because you've ever been bitten by a snake, but you have been told how bad the bite of a snake is, or you have lived with people who have shown you how terrible it was that they were bitten by a snake, So this really reminds me of that. It reminds me that people talk, once somebody is traumatized and they have to protect themselves, sometimes they tell other people, even without telling them, that you don't want to be beaten, or you don't want to get into such a situation. So I want to open the floor just for a few minutes to Lavender and Bibi and Rushi and Latanja. Just one tip, if you have one tip to a group of young brothers who are listening, what would you give them? Lavender.
At this moment, I think the only tip and the best tip I'll give to any young people is that stay true to yourself. Stay true to yourself. When you're real with yourself, that's when you can be real with anybody else. Thank you so much, Simon.
Thank you, Lavender. Let's go to Bibi. This is our round of wrapping up our session today. Let's go to Bibi. Let's hear what Bibi has to say.
Thank you, Simon. I would say be present, because when you're present, you build trust in your children, and they would know that you love them. And whenever you try to discipline them, but like by giving them advice, if you are present, they will trust you that you mean them well. Because to me, I don't whoop my kids, but I do discipline them, and I believe discipline is very necessary, because when you love someone, you want to correct them, and that necessarily doesn't have to mean that you have to whoop them, but let them know that they are needing correction. And by being present, you build that trust and discipline yourself as well. Because when you're there, they know that you're there, and they know that you care. So they'll be able to listen to you more. So being present, I believe it's like the most important and necessary thing that a parent can give to their child. And of course, by being present, you have to be positively and intentionally present, not just existing, but living and just not exist. And that's my take. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's really, really beautiful and true. My brother Rushi, share with us your perspectives, please.
Sure. I think what's very important is to listen, be patient, and be present when it comes to your children. Because with children learn the most from observing what their parents do. It's one thing. It's one thing I can say for myself. My father never had to beat me because I watched how he moved. I watched how his actions. He was a very calm man. And the thing is, when you're like that, and when you listen to your kids don't want to disappoint you. So you can get a lot of discipline. A lot of times just comes from your parents or my father just telling me what's right or what's wrong, and not wanting to disappoint your parents. That was really all I needed. I didn't need to be beaten. I didn't need to be fearful. And this proverb also makes me think a lot about Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson has a podcast. Everyone knew who Mike Tyson is. He's one of the best fighters in the world. But Mike Tyson would tell you that he's a very scared child inside. And a lot of how he acts of wanting to always beat people up and act like he's the baddest person in the planet is because of how scared he is. And all that comes from your environment of being beaten being beaten up and being fearful of violence. So violence is not the answer when it comes to discipline. Violence, what it does, it creates a different persona inside of a child. Children that experience a lot of violence in their lives from the hands of their parents, they're very easy to spot out. I could easily tell the kids who are being beaten a lot for no reason. They all act a certain way. So I feel and also violence is something that's just learned. You learn that from your parents, and their parents learn. It's just a vicious cycle. So I feel that as a young parent, before you think of disciplining your child in the way of beating, you have to think about yourself, think about your own childhood, and think about if you feel your childhood was a violent childhood, that's not something you want to instill in your parents. Even though our culture, as far as African Americans, you would always say, oh, if you see a kid out there doing something wrong, anyone has the right to discipline them by beating them, and that's something that has changed. I feel recent years. That's something that's not acceptable anymore. And I feel like something that should never be acceptable. I mean, violence, beating is all it's a vicious cycle that's been around for a very long time. And so I would say that's one thing I would say is just be patient, listen, and a lot of things that you want to get accomplished or get through to your child, you can get through by being present, listening to your kids, and letting them know the consequences of their actions, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's something about being present that you and Bibi spoke about, and I think being present allows you to listen and watch and observe and have a lot of answers to their questions, and really you enrich yourself by being present. And there's a lot you learn from your children and from your environment just by being present. But let's hear from Latanja, and then we will begin wrapping up our session today.
Hi, Simon. Yes, I would also take from some of what's already been mentioned that I say trust is important. We should be able to, as we would advise these young African fathers about disciplining their children, to listen to your children by seeing and hearing their body language. Be patient with them by reassuring them that they're not alone. And remember, it takes a village. You can always ask for help from your elders and from those that have already gone through this pattern in life. Also, allow them to explore their natural talents. We know that the curiosity is something that is naturally embedded in young children from our ancestral line. And so with that curiosity comes a spirit of being inquisitive. And when you're inquisitive, your imagination sparks. And with that spark of imagination comes creativity. So allow that to be their foundation for their spiritual growth and for their grounding, so that they can feel that they are enough and that they are good enough just as they are. And that's what I would add.
Wow, thank you so much. Yeah, helping your children understand that they are good enough just as they are has a lot to do with you also working on allowing yourself to embrace that you are good enough just like you are, so important. And I appreciate you, Latanja. I appreciate Lavenda and Bibi and Rushi for their contributions. I see Jerry and Fred have joined us as well in the room. Thank you. And Shalini and Moses and Kisiwa, Laran, Sarah and Nene. We had over 36 people that joined us for our conversation today on Clubhouse. I can't track how many people joined us for the last 54 minutes on YouTube, but I do see that we've had a consistent number of people present there with us today. If you are just joining us, today we've been discussing a Nigerian proverb that says, a child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife. We learned so much. You should watch or listen to this conversation from the beginning so that you can grab some of the takeaways that I shared at the beginning. But today is also, the 101st birthday of Vusamazulu Credo Mutwa, who was a Zulu Sangoma from South Africa. He was known as an author of books that drew upon African mythology, traditional Zulu folklore, extraterrestrial encounters, and his own personal encounters. I've learned a lot about Vusamazulu, Credo, Mutwa through a number of guests that I have interviewed for my podcast, and I've become people that I actually look up to, like Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who is the chair of the Credo Mutwa Foundation, and also Lita Boy, and a community of really, really gifted artists, spiritual leaders, chefs in South Africa that introduced me to his work. And yesterday I was in a meeting with the Dean, Dr. Marcia Tate Arunga, the Dean of Evergreen State University here in Washington State. I was on a Zoom meeting with him because Lita Boy, whom I met through this community that introduced me to Visamazulu Credo Mutwa, is trying to come to Seattle. He's coming to Seattle for Madaraka Festival so that he can do for us some, a ceremony. Here in Seattle and in many parts of the world, there's always a small ceremony that is done before big events happen. A lot of the time, it's the pouring of the libation. A lot of the time, it's the prayer. A lot of the time, it's recognizing the owners of the indigenous land, that the indigenous people of the land where the event is taking place. So Lita Boy is actually coming to the US to speak at an event in Atlanta, and the event happens to be just a few days to Madaraka. So he reached out and he asked me if he could join, and then I told him, yeah, join, but don't just come and attend. Come and speak, come and share your story as a Sangoma, and also, open the event for us. So when he agreed to do that, and when I was told that today would have been 101, the 101st birthday for Credo Mutwa, I just felt that I should bring it up here so that we talk about it a little. I just want to hear maybe one person or two people speak to. Have you, besides this space, have you ever heard about Credo Mutwa? Did you do some research? Because at the beginning, I posed and asked everyone to do a bit of research about him. And do you have any comments or anything to say about him? Let me hear your guys' perspective. And this is just a moment to just also pay tribute to Credo Mutwa, because there's a lot of incredible work that he has done. When I was talking to Dr. Marcia, I learned that there's a community in Seattle that actually was following his work for years, and there's a global community that follows the work of Credo Mutwa. And for me, I feel like I'm just discovering. So I want to pay tribute to him because today is his birthday. If he was alive today, he would have been 101 years old. I also just want to honor Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who has been joining us every Thursday and was a student of Credo Mutwa, and I also want to create space. Let me listen to you all, maybe one or two comments, and then we'll close our session for today. Thank you so much. Okay, go ahead, Bibi.
Thank you. I know I did of course from Gogo Rutendo I've learned so much about him, and happy heavenly birthday to him. And I'm a fan of his work, and I didn't even know about him prior to that until you started bringing Gogo Rutendo to the Daily African rooms. So it's like I'm yet to get one of his books and read more on it, and especially the African spiritualities. Sorry.
Yeah, no
But
problem.
yes.
Yeah.
So happy heavenly birthday to him. And I believe he passed away last year, right?
I think in 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. I think in
Gotcha.
2020, yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah,
So
indeed.
yeah.
Indeed. So thank you again for your, for your brief comments. And I want to just recognize EO, who has just joined us. We are at the last moments of our time together today, and I want to really, really appreciate you all for taking the time. I want to ask you to make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's at the top of the Clubhouse room, and I am live there right now. I always live stream on YouTube at the same time that we have this Clubhouse room, the African Father in the African Father in America Club. My podcast is also called African Father in America Podcast, so you should check it out across all podcasting platforms. And I really, really appreciate the support. If you haven't followed the club on Clubhouse, make sure you follow the club and also nominate 3 to 5 people to be a part of this incredible community. Thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a really special guest as well. So we'll see you here, same time, 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You take great care of yourselves. Peace and love.
African Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. African Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington.